Welcome everyone. So today we're going to be talking about unlocking careers in AI. It's an interactive session, so please do get involved. I know you've got your sound disabled and video disabled, but feel free to add any comments in the chat. So we're going to be exploring opportunities in the world of AI today. Okay, so I'm going to give you a minute to do this activity. So imagine you have as the superpower to create an AI superhero to help the world. What kind of abilities would your superhero have? And how can we use this? How can we use this ability or characteristic to ensure that it has a positive impact? So for AI to make a positive impact in our lives. And if you could add some words in the chat, that would be great. I'll give you a minute to do that. Okay, so we're looking at the characteristics or abilities you would have as your superpower. Okay, we've got one so far, teleportation. That's great. Any others? Just teleportation? Invincibility? Yes. Oh, sorry, invisibility. Yep, invincibility. Yep. To pause time. That's a great one. I think that's one that I would appreciate, to pause time sometimes when things go a little bit too crazy. Any others in the last 5 seconds? Okay. Time control, flying. Yeah. And the thing is, all of the kind of suggestions in the chat, if we would have had this conversation maybe 10 years ago, they might have felt a bit crazy, a bit too kind of too futuristic. But now, to be invincible, I don't think is an impossibility, because of the way the medical field is kind of being personalized, and how we can have treatments and diagnoses that look into our DNA, or certainly would be able to in the future. Um, Flying, I mean, we've got drones in the sky now, so I don't understand why we can't put a drone on our back and fly. So it could be a thing. Thank you for sharing. Right. So moving on. My name's Sukhvinder. I've worked in technology for about, I want to say about 20 years. I started life working as a support analyst, and then worked my way through into operations. And at some point in life, I was also a field engineer. So I used to cover the whole of the UK, trying to fix servers and set up networks. Since that time, I've moved into education now, and I have a focus on apprenticeships, and digital apprenticeships in the main. So that's me. Okay, so again, this is a very interactive session, so you'll hopefully get involved, and it's not just me talking at you. What is AI? What is AI? I'll give you a minute to think about that. Oh, sorry. Artificial intelligence, yes. What does it mean? When you think of AI, what do you think of? Robots? Yeah. Anything else? What about something like ChatGPT? Has anybody used ChatGPT? Some interesting terms. Right. So I'm just trying to move the messages that way. Okay. So artificial intelligence is the simulation of human intelligence processes by machines. especially computer systems. Specific applications of AI include expert systems, natural language processing, speech recognition, and machine vision. Now, I asked ChatGPT to almost ask itself, what do you think you are? And this is what ChatGPT came out with. Okay, so it's very much around data, how we keep data, how the data shared with us and in what form. So how do you use AI? How do you think you use AI? So let's have some suggestions there. How do you use AI? Do you use AI? Yep, ChatGPT. Creating images, yep. I was watching the news yesterday and on Sky News when they were talking about Donald Trump having lots of fake images made just for his kind of the presidential election. Coursework notes. Okay, to summarize, so you can ask ChatGPT, you can put a report into ChatGPT and ask it to summarize your work. Anything else? Okay, that's interesting. Okay, so we're going to look a little bit more into how we use AI through the course of this presentation. Right. Okay, so these are where AI are used. So they can help us with emails, mobile applications. So we go into, so when we look at, say, for example, now we're shopping on Amazon, Amazon know exactly what we're going to buy. It will ask us to provide, it will give us more suggestions with the things that we can buy, the way that we would like our deliveries sent to us. In terms of photographs, so you use something like if you're on your iPhone, it will have a facial recognition. So on my phone, very often I'll get a pop-up to say, oh, look at this new album that's been created for you, and it will be the same person that's in each of the albums. So it's created an album through each of the pictures by detecting the facial recognition. Okay. Mobile banking. So many of the banks are now using AI. We're using AI in business to collect data, share data, create reports, create wonderful presentations. Some of the things that we see on Instagram or any of other social media that you use may not be real things. They may be images or people animation created by AI. You no longer need to be a specialist in the field. You can create art if you know how to use AI. You can create lengthy reports without having to do the kind of the research that you'd have to do before. And there are always question marks around that, like how specialized in a subject do we need to be, or can we learn this way? Is it a superficial way of learning? Will our brain start to function differently? So AI in some way makes our life easier, but there are risks with in what we do. And the way that the information is shared. So one of the things is discrimination. So discrimination against certain demographic groups, it perpetuates bias and when it comes to training data. So it basically means that we have unfair treatment of individuals. There are bias against certain characteristics, protected characteristics, and that's something that we have to be mindful of. The data, the way the data is being trained may not reach the spectrum that we currently need it to be. So the data may lack fairness. The bias can compromise fairness of AI systems. So where is that data coming from? Who is putting that data in? Does it give everybody equal opportunities? Is it unequal? and also missed opportunities. So the AI bias may lead to missed opportunities in innovation or problem solving. So that comes down to the diversity of the information that we're giving, or the way we're training our AI systems. So does that mean that we could have a problem which is solved in a simpler way if we are talking to different people, or if we're the way we're presenting a problem? And that then also leads to, well, if we are resolving a problem, then is that problem being resolved in the best possible way? Is it inclusive? Is it beneficial? Is it beneficial for the groups of people that this problem needs to be resolved for? And these are things that we need to think about. The AI ethics piece is really big when it comes to AI, and to ensure that it's inclusive to everyone. So a question for you: how does HSBC, Amazon, and Apple use AI? Do you have any suggestions? Any suggestions? Any suggestions how something like Apple, an organization like Apple, would use AI, or Amazon? No. Okay. So in terms of, so I'll give you an example. And this, so again, with the photo sharing, so on your laptop, on your Mac, on your iPhone, you'd have a series of pictures. AI is used to identify the pictures. Also, something like your facial recognition. So that's security. That's how you get onto your phone. The same way with banking. So banking, in terms of AI, banking is used for security. Amazon, again, predicting what where you're shopping, how you're shopping, the frequency of your shops. So we're using that data all the time, and that's what's being plugged into our training our AI. Okay, so now looking forward then into the jobs, the AI jobs that you have. Um, what kind of jobs would there be? So is this a 2-minute task? If you can think about it in terms of your class, or in terms of groups, and then just put your suggestions in the chat. So what job roles um, involve AI? And I'll start the timer now. Great. Thank you for all your suggestions. So in the chat, we've got I think that was from last time. Programming, creating AI, social media, banking, advertising, marketing, design, YouTubers, and web design. So when I'm looking at these careers, I'm thinking very much kind of tech, administration, um, mm, a bit of design, so web design. I mean, already we have so you could design your website using AI by simply plugging in the various pages that you need, plugging in the data that you need, and using um, an AI tool to build your website, or using something like um, plugging in your information and using something like Beautify to be able to put a presentation together. So we're already using lots and lots of AI tools, especially in education. Now, AI can also be used to train robots. So any activity that happens in, say, manufacturing, where people would be doing a single movement, can then be taken over by robots, or certainly like a robotic arm if you're lifting a box and putting it onto another box or onto a crate or onto a conveyor belt. So these kind of roles can also be taken over by AI. Oh, sorry, I don't want to do that. Okay, just going to reshare. Right, next. So AI roles and responsibilities. So here, these are just a few of the AI roles that I've looked into, looking at the future roles, and not too distant future, looking at the roles that potentially you could go into after you've left an apprenticeship or going into apprenticeship or university. So one is a AI product manager. So you manage, you kind of work with a team to develop an IT product. That product could be a solutions driven product. It's working across functional teams, and you're sharing information, you're sharing skills, and you're developing a product that is either for the benefit of the organization or for the benefit of a community or a specific group. AI trainer. So this is an important one because AI only works as well as the data set. So who trains the data set? Where does that information come from? How do we make sure that information is current? How do we make sure that, as we've discussed, that information is not biased? Um, so the AI trainer would be responsible for making sure that the data set is prepared, is created, is current, and is relevant for the particular task that we're doing. So with anything where we're holding lots of data, where we need to have a security system for it. So we've got AI security specialist. So the kind of the guardian to guard the data system, the AI systems. Um, and this is a really important one, actually. And I know a lot of organizations who are now moving into AI and moving into using AI a lot more, are investing in an AI policy analyst or somebody to ensure that the AI that we're using is ethical AI, to ensure that it's inclusive, to ensure that there is the kind of the development going into regulation, and we adhere to the regulation, we adhere to the policy. So that's a really, really important role. And there are pillars of AI to make sure that the governance in any organization is sound, actually. Right. So what skills do you need? If you can just type in the chat, what skills do you need, do you think, to be effective in these roles? AI is quite new to us. The AI that we're using today may not be the same as the AI that we're using, that you will be using when you go into the world of work. We'd have different products, we'd have different services, different organizations will you be using AI in very different ways. So what skills can you arm yourself with, do you think? If I give you a minute just to think about that. Just thinking about the skills that you need to. Yep. So far we've got technology, editing, typing, computer skills. Yep. Just that. Any other skills do you think? What about thinking holistically? Anything else? I'll give you another 30 seconds to think about anything else. Programming skills. Okay. It's interesting. Okay. And the reason why I say it's interesting is I don't think any of the skills that you've suggested have that I've mentioned on the screen, and I'll tell you why. So, what have we got here? Teamwork. So it's really important to be able to work within a team, especially when you've got the design element of any product, and then going into the next stage, which might, so there'll be a stage of project management. So working together as a team to be able to adhere to a deadline, and to involve people with different skills. So not just the programming skills, but also the design skills, the infrastructure skills. So bringing all of those things together and being able to work as a team. Problem solving. So that's a really important skill. I think we have to arm ourselves for the future, the ability to problem solve. Many of the technologies that we use have been created and invented to solve a problem. So how can we in the future become problem solvers? Project management. So I talked about project management when we talked about teamwork. It's very rare that you'll have a single person involved in the development of a single project. It's likely that you'll work together in a team, and there'll be a project manager, and the project manager will monitor the deadline of that particular product to make sure that you're within budget, you're within time, it meets the specification and all of those things. Communication skills. So how can we communicate? How do we communicate as part of a project? How can we communicate that this is the problem that needs to be solved? And that comes in line with also presentation skills. So are you able to present? Are you able to communicate how a problem can be resolved? So how can we communicate across teams, cross-functioning teams? Okay, creativity. So again, creativity goes straight into the a similar thing to in terms of problem solving. So how can you use your creativity to solve a problem? And I think that's really important to have the ability to be creative, especially in tech, because this is, I think it's a really important skill to be innovative, to think outside the box, to think about how you can solve problems, to see how inventive you can be, and to think of a way that is effective, whether it comes to working within your environment or whether it's a solution-driven problem for that is for the global impact or for schools or for industry. So how can we be innovative in that? Curiosity. Now, for me, this is probably the most important. To have the ability to learn, to have an interest, to be curious is is the skill that you need in any industry that you go into. Now, the thing about technology is you may not know how to program, or you may not know how to do a certain thing, to deliver a certain project, but the ability to be curious and to want to learn is what will put you into good stead going forward into your careers. So you may not know how to program, but there'll be a point in your career that you may want to learn how to program. You're curious to learn. You're curious to solve that problem. You're curious to work with your team. You're curious to work across different teams. You're curious to learn about other people's roles. And as long as you're talking to people and as long as you're open to learning, um, that's what technology is. Technology doesn't stay still. So you can be fully skilled today, and understand how to program, how to develop in a particular program. But we may not be using that programming language in 5 years' time. With the introduction of ChatGPT, program can be done via AI. So how do you increase that curiosity to make you successful in your career? And critical thinking, to be able to reflect when things aren't going so well, when things are, when you can reflect on your own achievements, when you can look at a product and think, well, how can I make it better? How could I work better as that team? So how are you critically thinking? And if you notice, all of these skills are transferable. So they're not just skills that you need specifically to work in AI. They are skills that you can use in any industry that you choose to work in. Personally, from a tech background, I think these skills are very important in AI, in technology itself, particularly because we tend to work with lots of people, but your individual work is your own. So you will be doing that, your individualized projects, but then you come together as a team because you form part of a bigger project. Okay, so what's the future of AI? So when we look at AI, what's the future of AI? So the future of AI is to replace roles such as data entry, customer service. You'll find already, we talked briefly about banking, but many of the roles in terms of customer service are becoming generated by AI. You can ask AI a question: where's your closest bank? Where can you, how can you do a transfer? Where can you find an invoice? And you'll be able to get that information, and that's without speaking to anybody. So these kind of data entry or customer service type roles will be replaced by AI. We're revolutionizing the medical field. So we talked about how we can have personalized medicine by looking at your DNA, by looking at your genetic makeup, the medical the kind of the treatment that you'll be receiving will be specific to just you, and your genetic makeup. As a 5 foot Asian woman, my genetic makeup is not the same as others. So how will AI influence my treatment? Okay, and by looking at certain specificity in terms of my body, my genetic makeup, my DNA, my family history, my heritage, the treatment that I'm receiving may be different to my peers. And it's more personalized, which in theory should mean that one of the comments that we had at the beginning is to be invincible. So this will enable us to live longer, if nothing else, for now. Okay, so the future of AI when it comes to education. So students will receive a more tailored experience. Every student learns differently. We have different ways of teaching. we have different ways of being able to deliver sessions, to be able to create lesson plans, but how can we personalize those? How can we make sure that those experiences are tailored? I've just got one more slide, and then Pav, I don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah, hi.
Great. Okay. I'm just going to go on to my next slide, and then I'll bring you into the discussion if that's okay.
Yes, of course.
Okay, great. And then what is the future of banking? So we've talked about chatbots, how questions can be answered directly using AI. How do we have that client engagement, that quality of service without having to wait in a queue, and without having to be on the phone for long durations of time? And cars, so automation. So we've got automated vehicles, the increase of drones. So our transportation looks different. Okay. I wanted to, at this point, bring in Pav. Pav, would you like to just quickly introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. How are you? So my name is Pav. I've worked in the business and tech world for the last 20 years. The last several years working with big tech companies like Amazon, and then the last few years smaller tech companies, startups, and growing companies that are like tech startups. And I also teach at an apprenticeship college as the kind of a very part-time job. So I do a few different things, but everything to do with tech and technology. And I teach on entrepreneurship, AI, tech, everything like that.
Perfect. Thanks, Pav. So we've just I've talked through the presentation that's been the main focus has been AI, AI careers, the skills that we need to be able to work in AI, have a successful career in AI. So what are your thoughts? Where's AI going in the future, and what kind of careers do you think we're going to have?
Yeah, I think AI is moving really, really fast at the moment. It's something that if you had been talking to people 2 or 3 years ago, they would have said, yeah, it's an emerging technology, but we don't know what's going to happen. And in the last 1.5 years, it just really blew up. It became one of the biggest emerging technologies I think that we all are witnessing. And so the reason for that, I think, which Suk might have talked about a little bit, was around generative AI, and you'll see all the talking to chats and stuff like that. So I think that's going to continue as we look into the future, being a big part, just around how we can, train the models that we talk to, give them personalities, be able to create them to be more human-like in terms of the way we interact with the machines. And then I think the next level of the future of that world will be, as you see this on the screen, it's very fitting, like how do you interact with artificial intelligence within machines. And so, artificial intelligence can be broken down into, how mimicking how people see, so computer vision, mimicking how people talk, so natural language processing, and so when you combine all of these things and put them into robotics, this is where I think we might have a future where you're training a robot or training a model, interacting with that. Maybe your jobs are altered a little bit, even normal jobs, because we're doing stuff with robots or on side of robots. So I think there's this very cool, different way of looking at the future that's more intertwined with artificial intelligence and machines and robots.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned the robots piece, because I touched upon that in the presentation. But one other, I guess, important factor to speak about is, yes, AI is great, and it's the now. I'm not going to even say it's the future, and we're only going to build on where we are. I talked about, how it's quite scary because you don't need to be a specialist in a subject to create big reports or artwork, or something that in the past you'd have to have studied years and years to be able to produce something. Um, so I guess there's also, for me, one of the negatives about AI, and we don't talk about it enough, is the ethical side of AI.
Yeah, I think that's a huge piece, and I know you touched on it a bit. And the ethics of AI is, from what I've seen and what I talk about. I'm also working on a AI startup, and again, as I say, I teach and talk about AI a lot. Uh, from what I see and hear, the concept of ethics in AI is really big. And again, there's lots of great potential, as we've talked about just really briefly now, but also the other side of it is making sure that we understand basic things like, that there's that whoever's training an AI, or how the AI model or machine is built, takes into account like everyone's opinions, or has a right opinion. Is it biased? Is it not biased? So that's a huge piece around ethics. It depends who makes the model. Maybe if they're just putting their mind there, or what data is being put in, then that can also influence it. So there's a huge piece there. I think there's another huge piece on ethics, which is uh, the way that machine learning, which again is a branch of artificial intelligence, works. Machines are starting to learn by themselves to a certain degree. So we're giving them programs so they can start to figure out the data and figure out how things work. And that's a big career path right now, and probably will be in the future as well, as training machines, right, from a machine learning perspective. And again, how machines learn, and what they're learning, trying to figure out if we can continue to keep understanding this, because they might learn in their own way and their own path. And I think that's a huge piece of ethics, because it's like, hey, there's this black box people talk about. The machine knows something that we don't know. We didn't train them. We don't know what they've learned, because they've learned themselves. So there's this piece around, there's a fear and ethics around maybe machines are doing something that may or may not be right.
So what's the danger?
Yeah, there's this really good book I've been reading, and I always recommend books and talks and people. There's a book called Scary Smart, and it talks all about artificial intelligence and robots, and the future, and how I kind of tell it's very good, as a maybe added piece if anyone wants after this talk. But the danger could be that you get into a world where decisions are being made that you just don't know why and how.
Hmm.
So let's say there's a really practical example. We're moving to a world where a machine will help me write, and as Suk was saying, can help me become an expert as a writer. I'm not a writer, and so I can start to write content or publish articles. But actually, maybe it's not me; it's a machine that's helping me do that. In the future, maybe it will just be a machine that does it. And so the danger or the fear there is that, hey, the machine can just start to write whatever they want, and then we don't know what's happening.
Hmm.
Alternatively, another danger is that if someone has a bad intention, they can make the machine write in a bad way. They can make false news, fake news.
Yeah.
They can start to influence people in something that's not right, and they can do it in a speed and a scale, and that's probably unparalleled to what could be done right now or in the past. So I think the two fears. I mean, there's several
Mm,
more, but is this in
yeah.
this example of content writing is that you don't know what's being put out or what will be put out, because machines will have their own minds of their own, if you will,
Yeah.
and you can't uncode this black box. And then the second fear is that people might use it in a bad way to do spread negative or bad or fake news, which is a bit tricky, and we see a little bit of this now, but I think it just can be accelerated with AI.
Yeah. Yeah, and I see we certainly do see the fake images, whether it's on social media or whether it's around, in the news. We do see fake news, and it's I think it's very important for us to be able to unpick that and to understand that, not everything that we see is completely real. And the other point on that would be something like ChatGPT or Gen AI. It doesn't have the empathy and the compassion. So those are skills that I don't believe we can ever teach AI, because those are human skills that only we can have. Whether it's being angry or being aggressive, or whether it's, being compassionate and soft. Surely AI can't build those skills, can they?
Yeah, I don't know. Can they is the question, right? And I think that's a huge thing that people are thinking about these days is can that happen? The softer skills, the human skills, the compassion, and for the moment, no one's really, or at least it feels like it hasn't got there. But there's some debate when you talk to, like, again, these chatbots and generative AI. Sometimes it feels that they have feelings or emotions. There's a really good one that's not one of the mainstream ones. It's called Pi.ai, and it's been built to have more of a softer feel, and it's built by an ex-Google DeepMind person that had a lot of resource to do it, and its whole thing is to be more empathetic, if you will. And even that feels like this machine, this chat has feeling, and it's just text, right? Imagine then when it has images, and when then it has a face, a robot to it. It'll definitely feel like it. And then there's this world where they talk about artificial general intelligence, which is like the next level, where the AI actually just can think and feel and be sentient. And again, that's again very sci-fi and very, out of a movie. But again, for the moment, I don't, it doesn't exist, and people are wondering whether that will happen and how fast it could. Right.
Yeah.
Very sci-fi. We talked about an example the other day when I was teaching about AI. There's a TV show, Humans, that was on ITV, I think, several years ago, and it was really about robots and how they were just there to help humans, but eventually they became having feelings and stuff. Again, a lot of stuff from sci-fi is a prediction of the future that may or may not come to reality.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed. And one final question before we close up the session. We talked about the skills that you need to have, a career in AI. What skills do you think, Pav?
Yeah, I think generally I would say for being in tech and being specifically maybe in artificial intelligence, but like just generally being in tech, I think creativity, problem solving, and aptitude to just continuously learn. If you're looking at AI in particular, just one branch of AI that people are talking about a lot these days is this, again, the chat GPT is the generative AI, which is just a little branch of AI. And even if you look there, every day, every week, there's something new that is happening. And so you just have to be curious and learn. You don't always have to be the one creating it, but just to be curious and learn and keep up to date. It's happening so fast. So to be able to continuously process and understand stuff and take that in, I think is a big thing. So yeah, I would say problem solving, curiosity, and like that kind of like ability to learn or self learn are really big skills. From a technical standpoint, I think if you're, again, depending what you're doing with the career in AI, I'm not a technologist or a technology person myself, but when I work with people that are in those skills, in those professions, what I tend to see is that they have an ability to focus and get into like a flow state. They talk about this flow state. Even musicians have it. And when you get into this flow state, it's because you get deep levels of concentration and can go and actually go and solve those problems. And I think developers and coders and people in tech tend to be able to like go and sit and solve this problem in like several hour stints. And I think that's a hard thing because we're not all used to that or have that ability to do it. So if you're able to like focus and concentrate, which you can do from music or gaming or other things that could help you learn that skill to translate it.
Brilliant.